the weeks to come. But we turn now to a local issue, to campaign news here at home. Democratic presidential candidate Barack Obama announced Thursday he's opting out of the federal public financing system in the general election. By turning down $84 million in federal money, Obama will be allowed to raise and spend an unlimited amount during the election.
We've made the decision not to participate in the public financing system for the general election. This means we'll be foregoing more than $80 million in public funds during the final months of this election. It's not an easy decision, especially because I support a robust system of public financing of elections. But the public financing of presidential elections, as it exists today, is broken, and we face opponents who become masters at gaming this broken system. John McCain's campaign and the Republican National Committee are fueled by contributions from Washington lobbyists and special interest PACs. And we've already seen that he's not going to stop the smears and attacks from his allies running so-called 527 groups, who will spend millions and millions of dollars in unlimited donations.
Senator Obama is the first major party candidate to reject public funds since the system started in 1976. The decision marks a reversal for Obama. Last year, he'd pledged to accept public financing if his opponent did as well. McCain confirmed he'll stay in the public financing system. McCain's spokesperson, Jill Hazelbaker, said Obama's decision will have far-reaching and extraordinary consequences that will weaken and undermine the public financing system. The senator's announcement has met with a mixed response from Democrats. Senator Russ Feingold said it was, quote, not a good decision, and that while the current public financing system for the presidential primaries is broken, the system for the general election is not. We're joined now by two guests for a discussion on campaign finance reform and Obama's decision to forego public financing. Massey Rich is the communications director for Center for Responsive Politics, joining us from Washington, D.C. And John Rao is the founder and president of Americans for Campaign Reform, which is a nonpartisan group that supports public funding for congressional and presidential elections, joining us on the phone from New Hampshire. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Massey Rich, your first response to Obama's reversal of his position to participate in public financing.
Well, it was a reversal of position, Amy, but it, I think, also reflected a reversal of fortune for Obama. When he made the pledge that was fairly clear about over a year ago that he would aggressively pursue an agreement to take public financing, he, for one thing, didn't think probably that he could raise nearly $300 million in the primary. And I think more significantly, he probably didn't expect John McCain to be his opponent. He was thinking maybe Mitt Romney, Rudy Giuliani, people who hadn't really expressed any support for public financing or even for John McCain's campaign finance reforms, the McCain-Feingold bill. And so Obama thought maybe he was in the clear to take a higher road on this, and then lo and behold, John McCain, whose name is on a landmark campaign finance reform legislation and is a supporter of public financing, ends up being the nominee and essentially may have called his bluff, and Obama's fundraising improved to a level that we've never seen before.
John Rao, your response.
Well, I think Obama's mistake was the commitment that he made a year or so ago. It's been clear all along that $84 million in the general presidential election is not sufficient, particularly for a new candidate. In this case, we have a candidate quite new, not known by most Americans, wins Iowa, starts to bring in a lot of support post-Iowa. But his background is unusual for a presidential candidate. His name is unusual. And so clear, if you go back to when he made this commitment, I think that's where the mistake was made. We, at the Just $6 campaign, Americans for Campaign Reform, have for some time now, Amy, estimated that it would cost about $125 million, not $84 million, for a presidential campaign. And frankly, with the 24/7 cable, with all the attack ads that have been going on in the 2004 presidential, and we presume will happen again, we're going to take a fresh look after November to even see if the $125 million is high enough.
Can you explain, Massey Rich, Barack Obama's reference to 527s and how they fit into this picture?
Well, these are the outside issue groups that we really, I think most people became aware of in 2004, though they've existed long before that. The Swift boat veterans who helped sink John Kerry's candidacy by questioning his war service, that was an example of 527s. At the time, MoveOn.org on the left was a 527. These are groups that can raise unlimited amounts of money from just about anybody, including directly from corporations, from labor unions, from industry groups, even from foreigners can contribute to these outside organizations. And then they can run advertising or do other things that to most of us would seem to be campaigning. In the case of the Swiftboat veterans, they ran ads where they said John Kerry was, quote, unfit for command. Now, since we have a nickname for our president or another name that we call the presidency of commander-in-chief, it was pretty clear that they were saying don't vote for John Kerry. But because they didn't explicitly say do not vote for John Kerry, at the time they were within the bounds of the law. Now, the Federal Election Commission decided and ruled that the Swiftboat vets and some other groups that were active in 2004 behaved illegally, that they were explicitly, overtly, and expressly advocating for or against a candidate, and that they should have only been able to do that using limited campaign dollars as a campaign or political action committee could do. Now, they didn't reach that decision until almost 2.5 years after the election was over, and they fined these groups what amounted to about 1% of their overall receipts. So it wasn't a particularly strong deterrent. The question is, for 2008, will we see these groups popping up? On the right so far, there's really not a whole lot of activity suggesting that independent groups are going to go after Obama or other Democrats, but these groups can spring up overnight. They're like weeds. Because they can rely on unlimited donations, someone could pump $10 million in overnight to an organization, and they could have a very quick impact. So it remains to be seen just how active they'll be on both the right and the left.
John Rao, you ran for Senate yourself in New Hampshire. I know that you're a Barack Obama supporter, but are you critical at all of what he has done?
Well, first, full disclosure, my wife is one of Obama's 4 chairs here in New Hampshire. I haven't taken a public position because Americans for Campaign Reform is very bipartisan. Before getting to your question, let me just point out that Matthew describes quite well the 527 situation. But let's be frank. Recognizing the beauty of the First Amendment, the freedom of speech in our Constitution, private money, whether it's 527s or if they're eliminated, direct checks sent to ABC television or what have you, private money will always impact elections in the United States as long as we respect the most beautiful value we have, the freedom of speech. Therefore, for those of us who support voluntary public funding, Amy, it's vital that the amounts be high enough not only to get one's message out, but also to answer attacks from 527s or independent expenditures. Now, as far as Obama's decision and how I see that, let me just say, as I said before, the mistake that was made was a year ago. $84 million was not going to be enough for Senator Obama's campaign. How one looks at the decision, he's between a rock and a hard place. There was not a good decision. If he violated his commitment, obviously there's problems for that. If he stuck to his commitment, he probably doesn't have the resources he needs to answer the attacks that will probably be coming. So I think it's a very personal decision. I think different people would have made this decision versus that decision. He was in a very difficult position once he made that pledge a year ago.
I have to say, it's interesting to hear campaign finance groups be so uncritical of this decision when this is the very issue that, for example, you, John Rao, has set up your organization around, Americans for Campaign Reform, and particularly around the issue of clean money in elections and cutting down the role money plays in elections. But, Massey Rich, one of the points that...
let me just respond to that, Amy. We strongly support, as does Senator Obama, voluntary public funding as long as the amounts are enough. Publicly funding too low, forget it. It will not work. The voters won't get to understand the candidates, their values, and their perspectives. The amounts must be high enough.
But if Senator McCain agrees to the same limits?
But Senator McCain is in a somewhat different situation. He didn't start this presidential election unknown, well-known, well-defined. I'm not suggesting that $84 million is going to be enough for McCain, but I do make this point. It's more probable that it's enough for McCain than for the new candidate, Obama.
Massey Rich, one of the points that were made is that it was never considered that there would be so much money raised from the grassroots and in little amounts, and so that the spirit of campaign finance continues because it's not big money that is coming in. But the breakdown that you've done that shows big money and lots of smaller amounts of money contributed.
Well, Obama, when you look at the number of donors he has, and he claims almost 1.5 million donors, the vast majority, 90% or more, maybe 98%, have given him small amounts, maybe less than $200. By our measure, though, when you look at the amount of money that those small donors account for, it's still the minority of the money. 45% of his money comes from donors who've given less than $200. 55% comes from people who've given more than $200. And